93 got that beat.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In every episode, we get the distinct pleasure and honor to speak to a brother and sister that's doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor. And they share their God stories, the ways in which God has been at work in their life and the ways in which God has been at work then through their work. And today I'm excited about our brother, John L. Cash. How are you? Good evening, sir.
Doing well, Lawrence. Thank you very much for this time and this opportunity to share our conversation.
Yeah, man, I'm grateful. These are one of those things where you've seen so much. And so we started this conversation. We like to hop right in. You've seen a lot in your life. You're young, you look great, and you've served this country. You have come back and have served and have taught. You have stewarded amazing brands through your work on the marketing side and the business development side. And you have been able to launch and pioneer initiatives in spaces that I will get into that in a little bit more detail, and for brands that I think were quite needed and a bit overdue. And that's just an understatement. But part of the reason why I'm excited about this conversation is that I think that those who have walked with God in so many different corners of life and arenas of industries, I think just see God in a very unique way. And so with that, I'm going to start with, who is John L. Cash?
John Cash, proud Washington, D.C. native, grew up in Ward 8, Anacostia, and also Prince George's County. And yes, my journey has taken me from Howard University, HU, you know.
The bison in the building, all right.
Yeah, the bison in the house. I went all over the country looking at schools and ended up going in my backyard. Had a career in the Air Force. That's how I actually finished Howard. I had a ROTC scholarship, Air Force scholarship. Service-disabled veteran. The Lord has kept me here for some reason, because I could have been pushing up daisies at least 4 times in my life. But again, every time we wake up, that means the Lord has more work for us to do. And so I've, like everyone that walks this earth, we are all broken vessels, but that's how the light gets in. And as long as we have Jesus in our life, leading us with the Holy Spirit, we can continue to grow. So, I've had a career in the military and corporate, continued it in sports entertainment, and have done some fantastic things in the new technology areas of esports gaming, gamification, and as well as being an instructor. And that's one of the more beneficial things to me, because I always wanted to know another way I could give back. I give back by being an HBCU adjunct professor at Johnson C. Smith here in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I reside. So just a little minute and a half overview of me, and I would be remiss. I am the husband of Robin Cash from Tulsa, Oklahoma, Robin Harris, and I'm the father of Elena Cash, a proud freshman in college. My sister busted 3.7 this year during a pandemic, so I can't say anything to her.
Brother, man, that was God alone that saved you to not leave Sister Robin Cash out and leave Elena Cash out.
I will catch the wrath.
It took her. So let's get into it, man. I think, as you talked about, kind of pushing the daisies up for those who don't let that get over their heads. I think that's when you brush up against your mortality, to say the least. For you, what was the calculus for you, and understanding the risk that you were taking at that time?
Yeah, I think the baseline, and this is the overarching strategy or overarching message in all of my life that I just came to realization over the years, is that life is about service. And so my faith dictates that. And although I have not always been as adept in my faith as I am now, it's always been with me. And that's the key. God is always with you. Sometimes he whispers. Sometimes he smack you in the cold face with a cold towel. But God is always with you. So I've always been embedded in service. I was doing very well in high school, to the point that I could basically leave class and walk the halls if I wanted. And that's what I did in my 11th grade year. And lo and behold, I saw something going on in the gymnasium area, a cafeteria area, and I didn't really know. I didn't hear anything about it. To make the skin short of it, we were recruiting for the first Air Force Junior ROTC program in that area of Prince George's County at the time as an 11th grader. And I thought that was pretty cool. Why? Because it's unique. You get to travel, you get to lead, you get to manage, and it just struck a chord with me. So I became my high school's first junior ROTC Air Force commander. And I had the tutelage of having two great mentors who I wish I could have shared more with. Colonel McNulty, Bob McNulty, white Irish guy from Boston, Mass, combat fighter pilot, and then Chief Johnson, crusty African-American non-commissioned officer, and they just instilled a certain sense of leadership pride and service in me. I took that with me when I went to Howard University and enrolled. And although I was a sports star going through high school, that was not the case at Howard. And I was looking at opportunities of how I could continue and finish my education. And lo and behold, I accepted a Air Force ROTC scholarship. And so, again, I just had a sense of service, doing something different. To me, at that time, when we're talking before internet and everything, I just know I didn't want a 9-to-5 being a desk job. I wanted to see the world. I wanted to lead. I wanted to do things that, I felt was aspirational for me, but would develop me. So that was really my decision. Now, my father was drafted for 2 years. My grandfather served in the military, but it wasn't like instilled like within a lot of families that you'll see. And so for me, it was a sense of doing a unique thing and also providing a service to my country. Unfortunately, I was service disabled through an accident. I have a shattered leg and a busted rotor cuff. But again, God kept me here. I could have been pushing up daisies in DC. I could have been taken in DC. I could have been taken to the military. Those were two instances. But the Lord kept me here. And I would do it over again, my service experience. But again, it's like everything else in life, first pray on it. Pray that God's will be done. Yes, he already knows your heart. He already knows what his plans are for you, to prosper you and to give you hope. But still, ask for what you can serve him and how you can do that. And you know what? When I think across my life, it's when God is really blessing me with what his will is that has helped me the most.
I want to stay on this because I try to capture the thinking and the thoughts for people who don't understand that world, right? And don't understand that path. Because to your point, you said, none of us have kind of arrived when it comes to our relationships with God. And so everybody's been on a journey. But I think to your point, talking about those two instances of DC, kind of, you could have been pushing daisies. And then obviously, as you were serving, it seems that in the experience of serving, you have to come to terms with your mortality, particularly if you're serving in in combat or a Desert Storm, or these are situations where, again, you recognize that you may not. There's a chance that you may get hurt, or you may not come home. And so, was that a pivotal part in your relationship with God? Did that really stir it because you had to come up to every morning? You said, "God, keep me." Where was your relationship with God as you were kind of in service at a place where you may not necessarily go home?
My relationship with the Lord while I was in service is definitely not as deep or mature. And I think maturity with your faith is the most important word here for me. It was not as mature. Yes, I believed in God. Did I study the word like I should? No. Did I pray? Yes. Did I attend church and surround myself with others deep in faith? Not as much as I could. But I know I had a praying family too. And I know that also comes into play. So when I was overseas or when I was in face of opportunity, I always know that the Lord's will be done. And I have to walk out on faith, even if I can't see it. So again, I'm much more mature in my faith now. I was much more of a youth in faith in the military because I was not exposed to the elements that can make me better. And I didn't have again, a lot of times you can judge an individual, like they say, by the 5 closest people around you. And that's a great statement. And I didn't have people around me that were deep in faith, which reflected on me. So that's a little bit I can say about that. But again, yes, I prayed. Yes, I did read the Bible. Yes, I believed in the Lord. but I was not as deep in faith as I am now. But I mean, I knew he was guiding me along the way. And it was interesting being overseas there when you were able to see others, the faith of others. So that was really an interesting exposure, being exposed to other faiths, primarily Islam, in Riyadh, and how they took it. And it was really ingrained in all of their lives and lifestyles, which I find very interesting versus what what you see here in the U.S. sometimes are much more superficial.
I think this is something that many people can relate to, is this maturation process. There's sometimes there's step functions, sometimes there's acceleration points.
Yes.
Right. But we're all kind of on this journey. From that moment, when was a kind of a key acceleration moment where, because one thing we always talk about, a consistent thing, is that for people who even grew up in the church and the like, they say there's something that happened once they kind of came outside of the, let's say, kind of the status quo rhythms that they were used to coming up. And there was a moment or a pivotal moment where either God had kept them or something where it was like, okay, God, this was a wake up call for me, and I need to really lean in because you're real. Did you have that experience kind of like coming out of the military, or, was it near the end of it where you just, where it kind of shifted from not as deep to, I probably should take this a lot more seriously. God, I need to really be more intentional.
Well, it really shifted for me, I would have to say, is not when I got out of the military, but basically 5-6 years later, when I was about to propose to my wife.
Tell us about it, please. Men are hearing. Men are listening.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just keep it real. I'm going to let y'all fill in the blanks. I grew up in D.C. I went to Howard University. I saw the world a lot before I was 27.
You said it.
So I'm going to leave it there. And then I attended grad school, got my MBA from the University of Texas.
Shout out Texas.
And the reason why I wanted to get my MBA at that time was marketing and brand marketing appealed to me mostly because it was about running a business with somebody else's money. You have P&L responsibilities, especially in consumer packaged goods companies. I interned at Procter & Gamble. I worked for major companies such as Coca-Cola, and then even in banking. But when I was really getting serious, and I just gave it to God, I'm like, Lord, is she the one? Lord, have your will be done. That was when the light started to click with me. And then it was solidified on an unfortunate instance when we lost our first child at 36 weeks. My wife has this issue where she gets blood clots when she is pregnant. But that was something that was not diagnosed until after the fact. And getting that call when I was sitting in the ivory towers of Coca-Cola in Atlanta, Georgia, I just can't explain it. There's nothing else in life that I could explain. And then having to take that ride, I couldn't even drive. So I had to take a cab from Coca-Cola headquarters to Midtown Atlanta, which most people might know of, to the hospital and get the news. But that happened in July. But the following year, the Lord blessed us with Elena in May. And I only but God. And that's when I started getting deeper and deeper in my faith. And now it's been a 20-year, very robust journey. And I'm in a great place now. We tithe. And we tithe to the point that, okay, are we doing this? Yeah, we're doing this. Again, walking out on faith and doing God's will. Serving in the church. My wife and I serve on marriage ministries, men's ministry. And it's interesting. I'm the only African-American male on a probably 23-person men's ministry right now. But again, I'm looking at sharing opportunities, and I invite others of different disciplines. But to get back to your main point, is when I asked Robin for her hand in marriage, is when there was a sense, it was like a dream state, a sense of peace, calm, overcoming me. And that was my kickstart point or acceleration point, like you were sharing, regarding my relationship with God and what he has in store for me. When I lost my first daughter, we still had to go through the birthing process of the child. And that, I actually am so thankful that I had a chance to hold her We did pictures of her, although she was deceased. And that was still probably the most painful. I went into a room. I took the baby, the fetus, went into a closet, and I remember hollering to the point that they had to get security and trying to get other people to get me out the door. The door was locked. But I came back out, and I was at peace because I needed that moment. I share that with everyone because we all have moments or a moment that can impact our life. But that's where I released it to God at that point, that I'm losing his child, which was also my child. But I had to release that to God.
I thank you again for sharing. For sharing the moments. I can't say it's a moment. No one knows how it feels. I think the people understand how it feels in their regard, but I think uniquely that feeling of losing a child is something that their words can't do justice. But the reality that was a moment of surrender, and that it included the wails, it included the cries. And then at that place of almost that David, like the cursing and the hurt and the pain. And then there was a view of like, okay, I've surrendered this to you and I'm going to move forward. And that being something that's pivotal, I think that's a beautiful model and a powerful model. But I also thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that, because I don't think enough people share those moments, which makes it harder for people to understand why you're going to need a faith like this to navigate life like that. And so I want to make sure I honor that and how powerful that is. I think there's a story and a message around how integrated life is, and that all of life is teaching, as such as all of scripture is suitable for teaching, training, and building up in righteousness. I think that all of life, and so something as in a relationship, a big step in your relationship was an experience of peace and some in an outer worldly sense that kind of got you to a place of saying, you know what, this is something I want to lean into, because I do think for many people it is either compartmentalized or you don't see how everything flows together, and to our detriment, right? And so with this, you talked about kind of the other people's money, the OPM, a view of business at that time. Now, obviously now, and we're 2021, and this is an evergreen conversation we're having. There's a lot of conversations around the brands and the power and responsibility that these brands, particularly consumer facing and packaged goods, what they're doing and the responsibility they have. How did your faith inform how you approached work, and how you approached your P&L, your strategy? Talk to me about that.
I look back on it now in the sense that I was looking at my career, advancing my career, doing what I felt was right, and that I'm learning and I'm growing. But when you look at some of the brands, and I'm not going to mention brands because it's not for me to judge brands, and it's not just the companies I worked for, but when you look at what goes into food, into a cereal, what goes into a drink, how people advertise, are we really doing the right message, or are we doing it for the almighty green dollar? So I am not going to get into that, but I just look at it. Why should we be drinking more water than juices or sodas? Why do we take sugar out? Sugar is a carcinogen. Carcinogens lead to cancer. Sodium is not a great product in relatively any type of quantity. The way that they make salt, if you go into a salt factory, will amaze you. The way that food is processed will amaze you. Yes, it's done for efficiencies and profits, but that's a moral thing that everybody has to deal with. And you can point, and I'm not pointing at anyone, because Lord knows, I know when you point at somebody, you got three fingers pointing right back at you. But you need to be cognizant if you want to be part of this problem or the existing situation or a solution. So thinking what's going to be better products, better services, better opportunities for people, so you can maintain better health and wellness, as well as making a profit, because we all have to live and grow. But the way that impacted my faith is I wanted to do things that would be more of service and more productive. And that is not to discount what others do. even within the financial industry where I worked also, the banking financial industry. I've seen things, but again, what can I do to be of service and of solution versus the continuation of things? And I've done it in sports entertainment and now esports. So I'll just end real quick with esports. A lot of people like, yeah, kids shouldn't be playing esports and gaming 5 hours a day. It's not good for them. It's detrimental. But on the other side, I can share with you now studies that show an increased cognitive skills, opportunities for career skills, opportunities to treat different type of ailments within this industry. And all the games don't have to be a first-person shooter. And the first-person shooter is a game like Call of Duty, arguably one of the most top games out there. So that's what we all have to deal with. And I say, wherever you are with your career and your industry, you can still be of service and be productive to it. But again, and these things change. I mean, as a father, I'm looking at what my daughter consumed as a child, right? Juice boxes. I'll leave it at that. So you can take it anywhere else you want to. So again, I am not disdaining companies. Everybody has to work. And then we're investing in those companies and our stocks and our 401ks and everything else. But what can we do to get to a better side of services for services for ourselves, for your consumer, for your inline, and still be beneficial and grow in your faith and grow a business?
I love where we are in this conversation, because I think for some people it seems binary, right? When they're in these spaces, that there is I have to kind of go on and get along, right? In order to kind of navigate the system, I have to understand the rules. And so to some degree, I almost have to acquiesce to the rules at hand until I'm in some sort of position of influence. And then perhaps I can make some incremental change, versus there's some who feel that the model is the agitation, and then trying to figure that out, but that's not necessarily always works well. And or those who feel, you know what, I could impact this industry, but it's not necessarily going to be as accelerated as other people may want it. But I think I'm making smaller changes along the way. And then there's a fourth option, though this is not exhaustive, of saying, you know what, within the industry or me within the C-suite here, I can't do it. But if I run my own shop, which is something that you've done, then I actually have a little bit more leeway. I think some people, they talk about getting up the apogee, getting to the top of a mountain. And then now their whole position is like, I am going to now give back. But what you're saying throughout your career is that, no, it's not about waiting to that point. From the beginning, service has been everything that I have done. Now, I'm asking you this now because I know a number of brothers who are looking to serve their wives, their families, their neighborhoods, their communities, their workplaces. One of the issues is just like the stress and the weight. Shout out to our brother Jason Wilson out of Chi-Town, Detroit rather, of Kevo Abdullam. Like, how do you do this in a sustainable way, recognizing the weight that many brothers feel, right? That comes with leadership, right? Heavy is the crown, right? How did you navigate that with God? What does that practically look like with you over the years? How has that shifted to say, how can I keep my energy and my mind intact so I don't feel completely overwhelmed always?
That's an interesting point, Lawrence. I have to think about that. But one of the things I think about is that you are a product of your environment, but God will help shape you. So growing up in inner city DC, I've seen it, especially when crack was first introduced. And in the mid to late 80s, unfortunately, DC metro area was the murder capital of the country for 3 years, because crack came through and devastated our communities. Many friends I had locked up, dead, because of this drug trade. One of the first things I was involved with was the Midnight Basketball League in Glen Arden, Maryland, where I worked while I was in high school and college for a little while. And we developed the Midnight Basketball League program. Midnight Basketball League program was actually featured on Nightline on ABC. We had celebrities come through like Sugar Ray Leonard at the time, Larry Spriggs, who played for the Laker teams under Magic Johnson. And then we were able to start recruiting representatives from community colleges, trade schools, the military, to show our youth, primarily young black men, there's another route. That was another service that we started. But when you talk about the weight of the stress, we as African American men have always had that. And it's one of those things that we grow up with and we don't really realize. And now they're sharing how stress can impact your life, your health, and why our mortality rate is impacted by stress. So it's important for us to embrace one another and start helping one another, change the narrative. We need to understand that over 400 years, we have been manipulated in this state when we talk about the African American or the Black American experience and how it continues this day. I have I don't have enough time to discuss it, but you know what I share with all of my friends, Black, white, Anglo, whatever. The New York Times article, 1619, that was published in August 2019. Because during the past year, everybody always asks, well, what can I do? What can I understand? First, you need to understand your history before you can have considerable impact moving forward. And so that's what I do. So I'm not going to get into that. But in regards to it, we've grown up with stress. We need to start recognizing it, embracing it, and getting the assistance we need to do better. Whether that's in the court, on the ball fields, and the office suites, within the military. And one of the things that helps with me is you have to talk. We have to develop more open relationships. And I'm not saying sell your soul to everybody, open your soul to everyone, but you need to make sure, especially men, we can do a better job of having, developing and nurturing beneficial relationships with the right characteristics. Yes, if you're going to go to the club, why don't you go to the club Friday, Saturday night and have a business meeting? If you're looking for a wife, a body will get you a night. A mind will give you a life. Okay? We need to look at that and support one another, because the bottom line is this system was set up to divide and destroy us. We need to realize that, first of all. Then we can come together better, whether it's through fraternities, community programs, other initiatives. And let's not be bougie about it. Let's not make it let's not segregate among ourselves. I mean, I went to Howard, so I've seen it all there. The brown bag tests and all of the other things. Let's be inclusive. And know that, again, we all have faults because we're all human beings. But let's go from a position of love and just try this one thing every day that I do. Try to make at least 3 people smile every day. You know what that does? It puts you in the right mind state of Christ, in the right mind state of doing what? Being of service. And now, when it comes to life, even if you are not a Christian or not of faith, this also comes into play. Whatever you throw out in the universe, you cannot help but to receive it back in some type of shape or form. So that's what I would share when we're talking about managing stress and helping ourselves, regardless of the corporate situation and the family situation that we're in. Let's just boil it down to 3 things. First of all, try to make 3 people smile, because that'll be a faith post that you will do better with. Also, be in the Word every day. If there's something that's bothering you, I guarantee you can find it in Scripture. And we have Google now, okay? I couldn't say that years ago. You get to put it in and you can study on it. And then the last piece is to build bridges. Be a bridge builder, not a bridge burner with what you're doing in your life. Because remember, just like you notice me, other people are noticing you. They're seeing you by your actions. They may not say anything. They may observe you for a month, a year, 3 years until they say something. And what are they doing? They're evaluating you to see if your talk is reflective in your actions on a consistent basis.
This is a word, man. This is a word. I was laughing when you brought up the make the people smile, because I was like, that is so keen. But you brought a fraternity. I was like, I almost forgot that you're alpha, man. I still love you though. So it's all good. So it's all good here, man. Noop's in the building. But separately, I said, but I think that's such wisdom. The number one.
Shout out to William Taggart. You mentioned Nuke. So I got to go there real quick. William Taggart was a mentor of mine at Howard University, a native of Atlanta, Georgia, in the hood. Went on to become a COO at Legacy Wachovia, which is now Wells Fargo. Had a beautiful family. He lost his wife about 4 years ago. I went to that funeral. Then William passed 2 years ago.
God rest his soul.
Brain hemorrhage in the night. They had a 14, 16-year-old daughter at the time. Bill, we call him Wild Bill. He's a Kappa from Howard. He had just been installed as a president of Morehouse. And so I had to take the moment to, again, recognize great people like Bill and what he did coming back to Atlanta, being president of Atlanta Insurance Company, going on to be the president of Morehouse College. Again, recognizing those individuals and highlighting them so others will know their stories.
God rest his soul, and thankful for his service and his life. But I just think as the wisdom that you're sharing is powerful. And number one, the recognition that this is not new, nothing new's under the sun. There has been a steady state of stress, and challenge that we as a people, specifically brothers, have navigated. And I think too, finding that space, not only the resources through those who are gifted to help you navigate those things, but ultimately taking stock and inventory, doing a diagnostic of your life and those relationships that I think is actually modeled even in the Bible, of how open people are about their struggles, and how that is instrumental to keeping you well, so the wineskin doesn't burst, so to speak. And so I think this is wisdom. This is timely. I think this is powerful. And, I know this is not the only conversation you and I are going to have. I pray that according to God's will, that there'll be many more that you and I have. But I think just I'm just sitting and soaking in this how instructive it is. And especially the idea about the disposition of thinking about how do you make people smile. It gets your mind off yourself. It doesn't allow you to completely dwell. It recognizes that you are of service, that people are also called to joy, because for this joy set before him, he endured the cross. So for us, how could we endure life? Is for the joy set before us. And there needs to be a joy that we all see. And I think we see that when we see God and everybody else. And so this is, John, this is powerful, man. But I know that this is just the beginning, and I want to continue this conversation with you. But I have to think ahead. You talk to esports, man. But as brothers, sisters who are listening and watching, and they look ahead, how could they connect with you? And what do you have coming up that they can support you in?
Sure. I'm on my Twitter is at John L. Cash. You can Google me. LinkedIn is the quickest, fastest way to get me. So please go on my LinkedIn account. My company is the Narmer Group, www.thenarmer, TheNarmer Group.com. And again, LinkedIn is easy to find me. But it's more to come. I'm very thankful for your time, Lawrence, and what you're doing. And you are a blessing. And again, you can't help the blessings that are coming your way by being of service. So I appreciate this opportunity to share a conversation with you and your audience.
Wow.
And to learn from you. Thank you.
John, thank you. This message of service is resonant, and it's timeless, but it's also eternal. And so, my brother, I am thankful. I respect you. I honor you. And, I look forward to keeping this conversation going. God bless. Thank you, my brother.
Yep.
All right.